Good afternoon. Welcome to our biweekly update. My name is Emily McKinley. I'm one of the Deputy Chiefs for Louisville Metro Police Department. Today I'm going to first go over some crime stats, talk about some progress with some of our crime data that we're seeing early on in 2025. I'm then going to refresh everyone about our crime strategy that Chief Humphrey put out late last year for 2025. And I'll give some feedback from the community that we're getting from the survey that we did as a part of that crime strategy. But first, I don't have a slide for this, but some of the weather-related stats for today. Between midnight and 1 p.m. today, we have had responded to 60 non-injury collisions. We responded to 6 injury collisions, as well as 26 reports of stranded motorists. There was a short time period where we went to a state form response where if you were involved in a collision, we asked you to work with the other party and complete a form online in lieu of an officer responding. We've now returned back to standard operations, so we are not under the state form procedure at this time. Looking at some stats for early 2025, so far this year we've had 10 criminal homicides compared to 16 this time last year. So we're seeing some positive results there, a 37.5% decrease. So that's good. Those are encouraging numbers to see. We hope to continue to see that trend as we progress throughout the year. Same for our non-fatal shootings. We've had 24 compared to 37 this time last year. That is a 35% decrease in our non-fatal shootings. So we continue to see violent crime go down. That is good news. Our officers are doing good work. The community is helping in that effort in keeping crime down and working with our officers. So it's encouraging to see those results. Our carjackings seem to remain the same as this time last year, but we continue to work on those efforts in reducing all of that crime. Just a reminder, last year we put out our crime strategy for last year. It talks about 3 different fronts that we're going to be working on this year. So data responsive policing, like what's happening right now. So that's where are the burglaries, where are the robberies, where are the shootings, and how are we deploying our resources. The second front is focusing on violent offenders, continuing our efforts to arrest those who need to be taken off our streets, who are committing the most violent crimes, who are possessing guns they shouldn't possess, and focusing those efforts on our violent crime. And then sustained focus improvement. So focusing on specific areas that we've identified that have the greatest opportunity for improvement to make those areas feel safe for the residents and the visitors of those areas. So enhancing the quality of life, working with other metro agencies to improve those areas. When we put out our crime plan, we also included a community survey. And we had over 1,000 people respond to our community survey. And we're getting a lot of feedback now. We're putting together a comprehensive report that we'll release publicly here in the next few weeks. But just to give you all a preview of that report. So one of the questions was, when it comes to the threat of crime, how safe do you feel in your neighborhood? And we're seeing that over 85% of the people who responded indicated that they feel somewhat safe or completely safe. And only 15% of the people said that they do not feel safe at all. And those are the people that we're going to focus on. We want that number, that 15%, to reduce. So we'd like to see that number reduce over the next year. And so we'll do another crime survey throughout the year and at the end of the year to see how those numbers change. What types of crime are people most concerned about? And we're seeing that most people are concerned about violent crime, whether it's murder or gang-related crime or street robberies. That's what people are most concerned about, and that's what we're going to focus on, and that's what our crime plan reflects. And that's how we're going to deploy our resources, that's how we're going to make decisions, and that's what we're going to report on, and that's what we want to see to decrease. Just like we saw with the numbers, with homicides are decreasing, non-fatal shootings are reducing, and so that's what we want to continue to see so that we can drive those numbers down. And then what kind of efforts do community members want to see in Louisville when it comes from efforts from the police department? How do they want, what's the strategies that they want to see? And so most people said they want to see increased police patrols. They want to interact with the police. They want to see the police officers in their neighborhoods. But they also want to see drug abuse prevention programs, and they want to see neighborhood watch programs. And there is another block that says other, and most of that was a combination of all three of those categories. And so working with other metro agencies to make sure that we are providing these services for everyone in our community, because that's what people want to see. Again, so these are just a few of the data points in the survey that we sent out at the beginning of our crime plan initiative. We're working on putting a comprehensive report together that will include more data points, and we look forward to sharing that with everyone here in the next few weeks. I'm now going to turn it over to Lieutenant Les Skaggs of our homicide unit, who's going to provide some updates on recent homicides.
Good afternoon, Lieutenant Les Skaggs, Commander of the LMPD Homicide Unit. I just wanted to reiterate a few of the statistic numbers that Colonel McKinley touched on. We currently in 2025 have 10 criminal homicides. Last year at this time we had 16, so obviously we are at a reduction from the year prior. Wanted to go a little bit further with that. In 2023 at this point we were at 25 criminal homicides, so in a 2-year span, year to date, currently this year we're at 10. In 2023 we were at 25. It is very early in the year, but it is very reassuring to be just about 2 months into the year to have that kind of difference in numbers. That's a huge benefit for us because we're able to focus more time on those cases we have. So I just kind of wanted to reiterate that. A little bit more on 2024. At the end of the year, we had closed 67 cases. And then in 2025, that number of closed 2024 cases has risen to 74. So we have closed 7 additional cases in calendar year 2025 that occurred in 2024. We continue to work these cases diligently. They take a long time to investigate. It takes a lot of resources and a lot of work and effort on our detectives' part to put these cases to a point where they are closed. We continue to ask for patience. That is a very hard question to ask of victims' families for patience, but these cases, they take a lot of time. Families want justice, they want resolution quickly, and we wish we could give that to them. Unfortunately, due to the circumstances of this type of investigation, it takes time. In a homicide investigation, the victim is deceased. They cannot tell us who killed them. We have to investigate that crime, find all the facts, and determine beyond a reasonable doubt before we can charge and arrest that person. Many times we have an idea of who is responsible, but we don't have enough information to charge that person and take them into the judicial system. The first-hand witness information is huge for us. Someone who actually saw an incident occur or can tell us something firsthand, they are a beneficial witness to have, and we always encourage that information to come to us. There's 2 cases that I want to touch on that were recent cases. The first occurred yesterday. Our 2nd Division responded to 1351 South 20th Street at approximately 9:26 in the morning on report of a person down inside of a vacant residence. That case is going to be investigated by the homicide unit. It is related to an Operation Return Home or that we had issued on February the 11th. At this point, the family of the victim has been notified. We are going to allow the medical examiner to make the public notification on the identity of that victim. But the homicide unit picked up this case back initially as a missing person case. The missing persons unit is part of the homicide unit. They did an outstanding job beginning to investigate this right away. Because of the circumstances of the missing person on February the 11th, that's why the Operation Return Home was put out to social media. Because of the circumstances, it definitely necessitated that kind of involvement. And that unit has continued to work this case and will so until its conclusion. The other case that I wanted to discuss was the homicide of Officer Michael Weda. We are still actively investigating this case. We are going to continue to plead with anybody who saw Michael on Saturday, February 15th, to come forward if they spoke to him, if they saw him, if they saw someone matching his description in the 2700 block of Cedar, black male, thin build, wearing a green shirt, blue pants, and athletic running shoes. That was the description of Officer Weda. So again, if anyone saw Officer Weda or someone matching his description, please reach out at 574 LMPD and let us know. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Let's see here. All right, so my name is Sergeant Aaron Browning. I'm with the Louisville Metro Police Department SWAT team. I am a current team leader on that team. Today we're going to talk about a call out or a SWAT response that we had last week at 1305 Bridget Drive. But before we do that, we're going to discuss our decision-making process, so that way you guys have a guideline on how we respond or how we react or why we do the things that we do. So if you look at the screen, PI2 is the acronym that we use for our decision-making process. I look at this as a guide. All right, it helps us decide on what's priorities and what equipment and what tactics that we're going to use. So the first one's going to be safety priorities. I know you've heard the chief speak of this. For those of you all who don't know, it's going to be who doesn't have the most control of the situation that we're in. So if you look at the person who has the least control, it's going to be a hostage or a civilian. Then it comes the officer, and then comes the suspect. And so one thing that I want to note on the safety priorities, and specifically related to our 1305 Bridget, we had no hostages. We had civilians in the area, but when we get to it, it'll make sense. But we had officers and a suspect. And I want to make this clear that the officers are higher on the priority list, but that does not negate the fact that the suspect's life doesn't matter. We do care. That's why we do the things that we do. And then I'll explain that here in a little bit. So our next block is going to be intel or information. This is what drives us into making our decision making, all right, or forces us into doing certain things. So, and then next, environment. Environment can affect what we do, especially the tools and tactics, right, or technology. And so the first three are really what focus our mission and drives us inside of our decision making. Obviously, T is for tools, tactics, and technology. So based off the three above, what are we going to apply in this situation? Take into account the safety priorities, how we can save all lives that are involved. And then last, you got your officer instincts and experience. All right. This is extremely important. This is built off being in situations and understanding and training and dealing with certain high-stress situations that we deal with. All right, so now that you have an understanding of PI2 or a decision-making process, we're going to start walking through the SWAT response at 1305 Bridget Drive. All right, our 3rd Division Detective Unit conducted an investigation at this location. I think it was starting on February 9th. Through their investigation, they were able to obtain an arrest warrant for wanton endangerment first on the suspect that lived at this location. And they applied for and were granted a search warrant. This individual had a mental inquest warrant as well, and an unserved emergency protective order that stemmed from their investigation and the incidents that occurred on February 9th at that location. So one thing that I do want to note on this, the reason that we were called, this subject's actions, and we'll get into the intel and information here in a minute, we're starting to escalate, which put the public at risk, which is why we got involved. And that'll make sense here in a minute. So this is what was provided to us prior to us arriving on scene. This suspect was firing into 2 houses on the street with a shotgun. He shot at his neighbor 2 days later with a long gun. The neighbor was standing out on his porch. Information from our investigative unit revealed that the subject was booby trapping the house and yard with explosives, where they even saw him recently with post hole diggers and fresh holes in the yard. The individual had prior military experience, to include sniper experience, and he was a prior employee of a gun range that's locally here. He had a history of drug use and was using methamphetamine, and he was experiencing a mental crisis and had a history of mental illness. And some of the most alarming intel was he had hand grenades, dynamite, and access to automatic weapons inside the house. So when we're working through that, we look at Pi 2, how we attack this problem. So one thing to take into note, we were in an environment that included a neighborhood. So prior to us arriving on scene, you look at the safety priorities. We are looking at, we have civilians involved. So prior to us arriving on scene, we notified them. Our investigative unit did a great job obtaining that information, had that information prior during the planning process. We notified them, hey, we're going to be on scene in this amount of time. Please leave the area. If you do decide to stay, this is what you need to do inside of the house. You need to be the furthest distance away from the location due to the explosive threat and him shooting at neighbors. So with that being said, what we had left was the officers and suspects in the area. So with the intel, we decided to move into our tactics, which we conduct a surround and call out. So a lot of our operations are surround and call out. The reason that we use this is we use this so that we can give every subject the opportunity to surrender on their own without having to use any kind of force. All right, it's extremely important to us. And what that consists of, or what that looks like for a surround and call out, is us strategically placing officers around that location that isolate that subject from the community so that he is no longer an immediate threat. All right, so with that being said, some piece of equipment that we use is an armored vehicle. It is ballistic rated, and it is explosive protection for our officers. The reason that is important is if those officers have ballistic protection and explosive protection, they have the ability to enact or put into place other measures that do not have to be lethal force. And I say that is us taking in the account the suspect's life. All right, so I think that is very important and needs to be pressed upon in this situation. So with the surround and call out being conducted, most of them, actually all of them, start with announcements. All right, again, we're trying to get this individual to walk out the front door on his own accord. All right, that's the best case scenario. That's what we want, especially dealing with explosives, especially with him inside of his house, his stronghold. All right, so announcements were conducted. He had ample amount of time to exit the location, to which he did not. All right, another great thing about the armored vehicle, they have long battering arms on them, which allow us to push open front doors or breach front doors. All right, so after this individual refused to come outside, we utilized the battering arms to push open the front door. What this allows us to do is introduce our technology. Certain technology that we have are robots and drones. In this case, we deployed our drones inside the location. They're interior drones. What this allows us to do is gather more information. More information on the suspect, more information on the layout. Clearly the door wasn't booby-trapped, but that doesn't mean that there's not other booby traps inside. Our drone operators are looking for that. They're also looking for the suspect or any clues of where the suspect might be. So during the operation of the drone, they located a attic space where the ladder had been pulled down, and then also another closed door. All right, this is important because in a surround and call out, we're trying to do everything that we can from outside of the location so that we don't have to push a fight with this individual, especially with the threat of explosives, the mental crisis that this subject was experiencing. He's already shown he's made bad decisions, and we don't want to force another bad decision where we are going to have to force officers to protect themselves. Right? So drone located that closed door. We then decided to use an armored vehicle on the other side of the location to breach the window. All right. A second drone was deployed so that they could look inside and see if the subject was in the front room. So the individual was not in the front room. Another tool that we are going to employ in this situation is chemical agent. The team deployed chemical agent inside the location, and this was an effort to force him to surrender. All right, chemical agent is a great tool. It is another gap between going hands-on with somebody or lethal force. All right, our goal with deploying the chemical agent into the first floor window was to ensure that we could get him to surrender on his own accord, push him out of his stronghold. Keep officers outside, take him into custody, and everything will be good. So, again, he had ample amount of time to exit the location, from the door being breached to chemical agent being deployed. While we were waiting for the chemical agent to work or the effects to take place, we received more information from our investigative unit on scene, that from a reliable source, that this subject is suicidal by cop, and he is known to go into the attic to hide. So, with that being said, the team began to, after ample amount of time again for this individual to come out, we started to use the armored vehicle to pull the front of the house out off the location. And what this does is it gives us the ability to see inside. It gives us the ability to clearly operate our equipment, because sometimes equipment fails. It's a tool. It wasn't until the armored vehicle started to breach or push a hole into the attic did we get contact with this individual. All right, so the team made contact with this individual and started to give him instructions. He stated that he wanted to come out, so they gave him instructions to come out down the ladder where he had come. While he was coming out, he placed a rifle on a hook inside the hallway, and we'll show you a picture of that here shortly. So it's important to know that we took all these steps to force him out of his stronghold where he was armed with a rifle. If we would have just sent officers inside there, we would be having a different press conference right now. So we are talking about property damage and the preservation of life. So he was taken into custody without incident. His eyes were burning. We got him medical treatment. Whenever we deploy to a scene, we do have our paramedics that are assigned to us who have emergency medical on standby. So what you're going to see here is 34 rifles, 34, let's just say 34 firearms were recovered, 5 grenades, 1,000 rounds of ammo that were recovered. On the left, you can see a picture of the hand grenade. In the middle, you will see the rifle that the subject placed on the hook as he was climbing down the attic. And on the front, on the right, you will see where we pulled the front wall off in the attic space where we had contact with him. So again, one of the things that I want to do, I want to give a shout out to the team. SWAT's mission is to save lives, and no doubt the actions that they took that day, they saved that man's life. I'm proud to work for them as their team leader, as one of their team leaders, and they're doing the hard work every day. And so there's no doubt in my mind that they saved that gentleman's life. So again, we're talking about property damage and not the loss of life. So that's why we did what we did, and I hope you have a better understanding. Here's some more firearms that were recovered, to include high-powered rifles. And this is an overview of the house.
So the question was, why is violent crime down compared to this time last year, and also compared to this time in 2023. I think having a plan does a lot for officers and the community, having everyone on the same page, understanding what the mission is. Holding officers and commanders accountable. We during CompStat, looking at crime data, assessing what the plan is, and this happens weekly with commanders. What's your plan for addressing whatever the problem is in your division? And then coming back the following week or a couple weeks later, talking about what you said you were going to do and what does crime look like now. And then rewarding officers when crime goes down. And then communicating with the community better. I think that goes a long way as well. So we hope to continue to see that trend here in the next few months. So.
Do you all believe weather has played an impact in reducing the violent crime, just given what happened in January? We were practically snowed in for a week, and just the cold temperatures and everything like that.
Right, yeah. So the question was, do we think that weather plays a role in crime? Absolutely. I think you'll see crime go up in the summer months. However, if you look back at what the weather was this time last year as well as this time in 2023, we did have some snow days and significant snowfall and some cold weather during those months as well. So while we could say that weather has played a role, that's why we compare year to date, and so that we are comparing the same time period, and so we are seeing the trend go down regardless of the weather.
The corrections officer that was killed, I know the procession just brought his body back to the funeral home. Do we know any updates of funeral times or how the community can reach out?
The question was about the corrections officer and if we have any updates on his funeral or arrangements. We don't have that at this time.
Could we talk about, maybe give some more context to why, maybe this is a question for you, Lieutenant Skaggs, about, when there's fewer homicides, it gives you guys more time to solve other cases, and just give a little more context to what that allows for you guys to do.
So the question was, when there's fewer homicides, it gives us more time to work those homicides we do have. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yes. Anytime that we have fewer homicides, the detectives in the unit are able to focus on that homicide to do the work that needs to be done. A lot of times what happens in the past was we have multiple homicides in a week or several in a day. Those detectives go from basically one scene to the next, and it's just like any other task. When you're replacing this current homicide with now this new homicide and working that scene, they are unable to put the initial time into that homicide that had already occurred. So anytime that we have fewer homicides, it definitely allows our detectives a greater chance of solving those homicides because they have more time to focus on them immediately after they occur.
Are there any other contributing factors that are helping get these cases solved quicker? Are people more willing to talk? Anything else other than just a little more time?
The question was, is there anything else additional that's helping us solve these cases? Very talented detectives that do amazing work continually. Primarily, it's the work that they put in, all hours of the night that they put in. Yes, the community involvement is crucial in helping us solve these crimes because if they witnessed an incident and can tell us about it, then we have an eyewitness that can help us with that. So yes, we've seen assistance from the community, assistance from the department, resources, trust that we are out there, doing what needs to get done and given the leeway to do that is encouraging. And again, the detectives I have in that unit are what I would consider some of the best on the department because of what they give up in their lives, their personal lives, to do a very difficult job, and they do amazing work.
Something that you mentioned is that some days you guys go to multiple homicides in a day. I've been to 4 homicides in one day. Are you all holding your breath at all that maybe by the end of next week, at the end of the month, that we go from 10 to 16 because it only takes one bad weekend for those numbers to increase?
So the question was, if we obviously have a spike in the future, what that does to our unit. Is that fair? That is always a concern. We have no control over when a homicide occurs. Obviously, it does create challenges and difficulties when we have multiple homicides in a single day. We utilize this time we have now, where we are in a down year with homicides to focus on not just the 2025 homicides, but the 2024, 23, 22, all those open homicide cases. Those detectives are still working those investigations as well. So it's not just the 10 homicides this year that they're focused on. Detectives in the unit that have been there for several years, they have homicide cases that are years old, and they are working those cases still too. Those cases are not closed. So it's not just the current ones. It's they carried those older cases as well. And like I said, we have closed 7 cases that occurred in 2024 in 2025. So it's not just this year, but it's the years past when we had a lot of homicides. We're still working on those as well.
Unrelated question to everything we've talked about today, but we've had 2 recent cases, one in November, one just yesterday or sometime this week, of adults leaving handguns out, children getting a hold of them, accidentally shooting themselves. Is LMPD encouraging these cases be prosecuted? I know there's not exactly a law that spells out what that person should be charged with if they didn't have a gun, you know, if they didn't have a gun locked up or anything, but is there any work you guys are doing in relation to these cases?
So obviously raising awareness that firearms should never be left unsecured. Obviously there's gun locks, there's gun safes. You know, a firearm should never be left in a location where a child could get that firearm. As it relates to your question, when a child obtains a firearm and unintentionally kills themselves with that firearm, a child that should never have had access to a firearm, we treat that case just like any other case where we investigate it thoroughly. We document everything that happened with that case, where the gun was, how they were able to gain access to it, and ultimately we take our findings, our case, and we present it to the Commonwealth Attorney, and obviously through consultation with the Commonwealth Attorney, that determination is made if the parent is charged. Obviously we have to show that that firearm was left in a condition that that child should have never had access to it, but ultimately we investigate the case. We find all the facts that we can. We present that final case to the Commonwealth to make a determination if they want to pursue charges.
Are there legislative priorities for LMPD to help lawmakers create some sort of law to address this issue so it's clear what these individuals, what the consequences are and what they can be charged with?
So the question was, are there legislative efforts from LMPD to enhance laws? We've worked pretty closely with the Whitney Strong Foundation, and I know they work closely as far as like gun safety and gun laws. So we support you know, any laws and efforts that they might have on the table to keep people safe. Another thing, in conjunction with the Whitney Strong Foundation, we've worked with the National Shooting Sports Foundation. They have donated thousands of gun locks to LMPD. Every LMPD division and our community resource officers have ample amounts of gun locks that we will give away free if anybody's interested in getting a gun lock or having a gun lock. Not only does it protect kids who find guns or might get a hold of guns, but if your gun is stolen from your house or from a vehicle, which you should never leave your gun in a vehicle, but if it were stolen and it did have a gun lock on it, it would be very difficult for anyone to use that firearm. But gun locks are important not just for kids getting a hold of guns, but suicides. You know, oftentimes there are split seconds between making that decision of pulling that trigger in a suicide, and if you keep your gun with a lock on it, just the time that it takes to unlock that gun might be the time that you need to change your mind. And so preventing suicides is important as well. Suicide is up this year, I do know that. And so mental health is a big issue in our community as well as all communities, but gun locks are important, whether it's protecting kids, keeping guns safe from getting in the wrong hands on the street, or protecting yourself or others from suicide.
One last question from me. I know you guys are saying you want to increase your presence within the communities. Are there any community events coming up where people will see you out and about in?
The question was about community events coming up. We can get you a list of those. I don't have the dates off the top of my head right now. So.
My last question also about those survey results. For the people that said they were more concerned about violent crime, things like that, do you know, were those coming from kind of the same area? Was it scattered across Louisville?
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys know that?
So we do have zip codes that all the survey results came from, and again, we're in the process of putting together a comprehensive report from that survey, and so that data will be included in there as well.
That's it.
Thank you.